The Justice Department is releasing new videos related to the January 6th insurrection as their massive investigation continues to move forward. This clip from January 6th shows police officers running down the stairs, followed by a surge of chairs. Then come the rioters. More than 600 people from across the country have been arrested after their involvement that day. Meanwhile, the House panel investigating the attack on the Capitol plans to vote today on holding another former Justice Department official in contempt of Congress tonight. To break this all down, let's bring in CBS News senior investigative correspondent Catherine Herridge. Hi, Catherine. How is it that these new videos keep trickling out so long after the fact? Where have they been hiding?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember, Tanya, is that this is really the most videotaped crime in U.S. history. We're talking in excess of tens of thousands of hours of security camera video, police body cam video, and then also the video that appeared on social media. So we've got two processes working in tandem. The first is just the natural litigation of these cases. More evidence is entered into the record, and then it becomes publicly available. The second is this press coalition, this group of media organizations, which includes CBS News, that's gone to court to make as much of the evidence about January 6th releasable and public so folks at home can make up their minds about what happened. And this new piece of video is an FBI interrogation of a defendant, Danny Rodriguez. He is accused of tasering a police officer, Michael Fanone. And in that videotape, he admits to using the taser. You see him there. And one of the reasons this video got into the court record is that Rodriguez claimed that the FBI agents had not read him his rights, that he could get a police officer, rather a lawyer. He didn't have to speak to agents in that interrogation. But what the government did is they put that evidence into the record to make their case that they had handled that interrogation properly. But it's really illuminating to watch that with, you know, just yourself, your own eyes and ears, to be your own sort of investigator and make your own assessments of what happened on January 6th.
Yeah, absolutely. And Catherine, you have reported on how this is one of the largest federal investigations in U.S. history. How much does it continue to expand?
You know, the numbers are pretty awesome in that true sense of the word. It's nearly 700 cases so far have been unsealed, and we're almost a year on from January 6th. And most of those are what I would call onesie and twosie cases, so an individual or a small conspiracy. But then there are the two major conspiracies that have been brought by the Justice Department. There are the Proud Boys and then the Oath Keepers. And in both of those cases, the allegation is that there was significant premeditation and coordination and planning almost immediately after the election for the activities that took place at the Capitol itself. So the numbers are extraordinary, but they generally break down, again, into these two buckets that we've discussed before, sort of individual cases. People make the argument that they were caught up in the moment on January 6th, and then the larger conspiracies where the federal government contends that the individuals planned this attack in advance.
Right. And let's look ahead to tonight, Catherine. The January 6th committee is going to consider charging Jeffrey Clark with contempt of Congress. Why does Clark specifically matter to the investigation, and what can we expect to happen tonight?
Well, Jeffrey Clark is not a household name, but he was a senior Justice Department official in the Trump administration right at that tail end, so post the November election. And the question and the allegation is whether he wrongly used Justice Department resources to investigate voter fraud and then to ultimately try and block the certification of the election result. What we expect this evening is that the Select Committee will have a business meeting. They will consider whether they believe he's in contempt of the subpoena, in other words, that he has not cooperated with their requests for an interview and also for records. We anticipate that the committee will agree on that point, and it could be voted by the House as early as this Friday. And then if it crosses that threshold, then it will be up to the Justice Department to decide whether they want to bring a criminal contempt case. And that's a hard decision, because every time you do that with a defendant, like we had with Steve Bannon, it takes them out of really out of the reach of Congress. It puts them into the judicial system, and it can take 1 or 2 years for that process to unfold. And during that whole period of time, that witness's testimony is not gettable for congressional investigators. So they got to have a real calculation whether they're going to write off that testimony and make an example of that individual, or whether they want to bide their time because they think that witness could be so fundamental to their investigation.
Right, and it certainly serves as a message, like you said, to others who might be considering not cooperating. Catherine, former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows is cooperating with the House committee. What information did he offer, and what did he hold back on? And is there the possibility of the committee not being happy with his level of cooperation?
That's a great question. Based on my reporting, the former Chief of Staff to President Trump, Mark Meadows, has taken a slightly different approach than Jeffrey Clark and Steve Bannon. He has been cooperating with the committee, limited records. His lawyer says that he's providing answers that, in their view, does not cross the line of getting into conversations with President Trump that they believe are covered or shielded by executive privilege. It's not at all clear that the Select Committee will be satisfied with that level of cooperation. But it does a couple of things. It makes it harder for the Justice Department to make the case that Mark Meadows is in criminal contempt of the committee because he's provided a level of cooperation. It kind of muddies the legal waters, if you see that. And again, it's a very difficult decision, especially with someone like Meadows as a witness, whether the committee wants to forego their testimony altogether and get it into the judicial system if it were ever to get to the point of criminal contempt. But just to be clear, so far there is limited cooperation, and your question's right on the money. Is it going to be enough for the committee not to take additional punitive steps in Meadows' case?
And I guess we'll have to wait and see. Catherine
We
Herridge,
will.
as always, thank you so much.
You're welcome.